Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining the Pro-Life Generation for this post-election marching orders webcast. Tonight, we hope to break down for you some of the races that we were engaging in at Students for Life and Students for Life Action over the past several months, and talk about the victories and also some of the setbacks that we face, and then talk about the opportunities the pro-life generation will soon have to save lives across the country. I want to first start off by thanking everyone who's helped Students for Life this year and has pitched in at the pro-life generation. From our Students for Life leaders who are on the ground doing door knock deployments in 106-degree heat and in rain and bad hotel rooms and too much pizza, to all of our supporters who chipped in to help pay for the pizza, the gas, the signs, the door knockers. This was truly a team effort, and it's such an honor to be with each of you tonight to talk about what we did together in the pro-life generation and what we have to look forward to in the coming weeks and months. We saw some big victories last night. The first being, and the top of mind, is the re-election of President Donald Trump to the White House and Vice President J.D. Vance. This was a huge victory for, I would argue, for America, but also for the pro-life movement. While we've been disappointed recently of some of the statements that President Trump has made, about maybe abortion merely being a state issue, which we disagree with. Abortion is an issue at all levels. We know we can work with President Trump, and we look forward to working with his administration. But we also knew facing a Kamala Harris presidency, what we would be in for, as her record as Attorney General of California showed. And that would have been attacks on our very rights of free speech and assembly, like she attacked pregnancy centers, her all-out promise to work with the Senate to get rid of the filibuster, to pass the Women's Health Protection Act, which they call Roe 2.0, but it really is abortion up until the moment of birth in every state, taxpayer funded, and no conscience rights for medical professionals of faith and conscience, way more extreme than even Roe versus Wade. And so we knew we were facing a lot in the pro-life movement. And so it was a huge relief to see President Trump reelected, common sense prevail. And it proved that abortion extremism, advocating for abortion up until the moment of birth, is a political loser in America, and it still remains such. We also saw a huge victory in the U.S. Senate. The U.S. Senate becoming majority Republican, majority pro-life. That doesn't mean we're not going to have fights in the Senate and work to do in the Senate, but this is huge. And we're still waiting on the Federal House of Representatives races to see if Speaker Mike Johnson will retain the gavel there. But we are hopeful and praying that is true, that we see a true Republican trifecta, which we need to accomplish one of the things we're going to be talking about here by the end of this webcast. The second biggest victory we saw, though, last night came very early on in the evening. And it was one that, quite frankly, moved me to tears because it was a singular vote that determined, and we knew would determine, whether tens of thousands of children would get to be born, would be spared the violence of abortion. And that was the defeat of Florida's Amendment 4. Florida's Amendment 4 was defeated thanks to the leadership of Governor Ron DeSantis, thanks to Students for Life Action, Students for Life groups across the state of Florida, and many pro-life organizations who are working tirelessly, throwing everything we had into Florida to see that amendment fail to meet the 60% threshold needed. And it did, in fact. This is massive because we know, as one of the key organizations lobbying to pass the Florida Heartbeat Abortion Protection Act, Florida used to be one of the top 5 states in the nation for abortion. It was an abortion tourism destination. When the Heartbeat Act was signed into law, and Students for Life leaders at FSU were proudly smiling and standing behind Governor DeSantis as he signed it into law, we knew immediately that as many as 50,000 babies would be saved that year. And that is what we were fighting for, was the lives of 50,000 babies every single year. And that, if nothing else last night would have gone our way, that was enough for us to go to bed with a smile on our face and joy in our hearts. We also saw the defeat of the South Dakota and Nebraska late term all trimester abortion ballot referendums. in the U.S. Senate. Like I said, we saw 3 gains, which will be huge for key pro-life judicial and legislative appointments. We saw 3 Students for Life alumni win last night. One from Missouri, Dr. Bob Onder, who's actually heading to the U.S. Congress, and 2 who'll be serving in the New Hampshire and Kentucky state houses. So excited for that. And I can't wait to see where they go in their political careers. Our state legislative candidates in West Virginia, South Carolina, Oklahoma, who had defeated pro-choice Republicans in the primaries, who we were more than happy to educate voters about, saw election. They won the election in the general, which is important because often we hear from our friends in the GOP that we shouldn't engage in the primaries as pro-life organizations because it could mean that Democrats win in the general race. That was not the case. Time and time again, we have proven this to be untrue. In Oklahoma, we encourage voters to vote no against the 3 Supreme Court justices that killed our Life at Conception Act. One of those justices went down in defeat, and now a pro-life justice will be able to be appointed. We've seen the North Carolina House is likely going to retain, the North Carolina legislature will likely retain their supermajority, which will help hold back the abortion extremism of their new governor. In Arizona, it looks like the GOP may keep the House and may have a tie in the Senate, once again, holding back the extremism of their pro-abortion governor. In Michigan, the Republicans may take back the House of Representatives there, which will once again hold back the pro-abortion governor. And we saw an important victory with Rep. Jim DeSanta, after we knocked on 3,000 doors, help him protect a seat. The PA House, the last time I checked, is too close to call, but we may win it back from Democrats, which will help us in our quest to demand that the state of Pennsylvania defund the University of Pittsburgh of their gruesome research on the remains of aborted children that they continue to do, that our friends at the Center for Medical Progress exposed just a few years ago. We did so much this election cycle. It's hard to go through. We had more than 450 student leaders participating in more than 30 deployment weekends, knocking on more than 100,000 doors. It was less than $1 per door for the cost. We had Students for Life captains on campuses distributing flyers in 70 key campuses, reaching 1.4 million students. Our Abortion on the Ballot fall tour reached 54 campuses in key ballot referendum states, seeing an 11% minds changed rate when we had conversations. Our Almost Aborted national advertising campaign, which we launched this June with billboards in Times Square, we're seeing more than 8.1 million times. And our billboards in ballot referendum states were seen by 2.3 million Americans every week for 8 weeks. Our Vote Pro-Life First digital field team was focused in 10 states, targeting movable middle and youth voters. And we saw more than 4.1 impressions, and get this, a conversion of 23,982 voters who changed their mind about abortion and how they would vote because of our digital work. Our Kamala Harris infanticide commercial was seen by the more than 250 million after it aired on Fox News and during the vice presidential debate. We sent more than 241,000 pieces of direct mail, placed 484,000 phone calls, sent 1.7 million personal text messages. Altogether, we engaged in 156 primary races this summer, this spring, with 86 victories. And get this, our average cost per victory was only $1,179. That is unheard of, absolutely unheard of. So there's so much more I can go into. Just looking at the stats that we have already from exit polling, one exit poll that came out was pretty significant. 1 out of 4 who said they voted because of abortion, or abortion was their #1 issue, actually were for less abortion. So just because you said abortion motivated you as a voter did not mean those voters wanted more abortions. That's massive. That's something you'll never hear from the mainstream media. We've been telling political and media influencers for months that there was a 30 to 40% winnable plurality of the youth vote available. And we were politely dismissed by most folks. The youth vote had the most wildly pro-abortion ticket of all time to vote for, yet more than 40% of young voters, first-time voters, rejected it. They rejected it. It's unbelievable, some of the stats we saw. Young men, which we've seen on campuses all semester, flat out rejected the abortion extremism menu that the Kamala Harris and Tim Walz campaign were offering. First of all, it was the first campaign in the history of the world predicated on the fact that all they wanted to do was end more lives of preborn babies. Shocked that didn't work. I think we could have told you that. But we also had some not good news. We saw abortion extremism win in Missouri, in Arizona, Colorado, New York, and Maryland in failed ballot referendum fights. The loss in Missouri of Amendment 3 was so painful as our students were there. They were going to every county fair, door knocking in the rain, doing everything they can, led by Reagan Bartledge, who will be our next speaker, fighting back with such little money. In fact, this morning, some of the numbers we saw is that pro-lifers were outspent 30-1. 30-1 in Missouri. We lost by 100,000 votes. Imagine if we would have just had 100,000 more dollars. I have to stop my brain from going there thinking if only we had a little bit more money in Missouri, we could have won that fight. In Nebraska, we stopped the late term abortion ballot referendum. However, the way it was stopped, thanks to U.S. Senator Pete Ricketts, was they put another amendment on the ballot that kept the abortion law the status quo, meaning abortions are only legal up to 12 weeks. Sadly, though, that's the majority of abortions. So the abortion laws in Nebraska haven't changed. There's still a pathway for legislators to engage and protect women. However, abortion's now in the Constitution. So we are going to have work we are going to have to do there in Nebraska. So if you live in Nebraska, just heads up, we are going to have work to do. And we're also going to have to do some work in Washington, D.C., because we have to be real, friends. Many folks that were running for federal offices had adopted President Trump's statement that there was nothing to be done in the federal government to end the predatory abortion industry, which we know is patently false, since Planned Parenthood is the largest vendor of abortions. They're one of the biggest player in Democratic politics, and they get more than $700 million of our taxpayer funds. This means we're going to have to be engaged with our friends in the Republican Party behind the scenes on Capitol Hill in meetings to push our friends and leaders to do the right thing. Bottom line, the pro-life generation came out in droves. We gave it everything we had. We went for broke for preborn children because we knew it was all on the line, and we left nothing on the field. And I could not be prouder of the work you all accomplished over the past couple months, and we saw last night. But we knew this was going to be hard, and I want to remind everyone of that. We knew this was going to be hard. When Roe versus Wade fell, we knew it wasn't the end of abortion. The devil hadn't been killed. The devil was wounded. And the old saying goes, if you only wound the devil, there'll be hell to pay. And that is what we've been paying on campuses with the lies and the fear mongering, the angst. That's what we saw with the terribly deceptive TV ads in Missouri and Florida, just flat out lying to women and families about what abortion laws do. The worst of the lies I've seen recently, and something we are all going to have to fight back on, is this lie that pro-life laws prevent women from receiving care after they have a tragic miscarriage, which literally zero laws prevent that. And it's besides after killing babies, it's probably the single worst thing I've ever seen the abortion lobby do. So with that recap of the good, of the bad, of all that you accomplished, I do want to change focus, and I want to introduce Reagan Bartledge. She's our National Field Director at Students for Life America, and I want her to share with you some of our on-the-ground experiences with our amazing student leaders. This pro-life generation is going to lead us to victory.
Well, thank you so much, Kristan, and to all of you for being with us this evening. Our team has worked incredibly hard this election year by knocking on over 100,000 doors, passing out thousands of flyers on over 70 campuses, mobilizing over 500 students to engage specifically in election-related outreach, and 55 of which were chosen as campus coordinators and 117 chosen as social media ambassadors to really take charge on their campus and social platforms this fall. And thank you to any of you on this call who played a role in that this election season. We engaged heavily in 20 targeted states and primary and general elections. And like Kristan said, we left it all out on the field. And we've shown where we're active in the political world and fighting the injustice of abortion, students engage with us. having 32,000 conversations so far just this semester, 2,500 conversions, and growing our presence on campus to over 1,500 groups, which was a major milestone for us at Students for Life. And I wanted to take a moment to highlight just a few of our top successes we had this election season. You may have seen our abortion extremism billboard truck tour hit 7 critical election states this fall. We were in the Florida portion of the tour when ABC failed to fact check infanticide during the presidential debate and instead dismissed it as if it didn't happen. So we were sure to show up to the Miami ABC affiliate and played our 30-second ad on the billboard truck, which highlights the grim reality of some babies who are left out to die that survive abortions in our country. And it focused on the tragic cases of 8 babies who lost their lives in Minnesota under Governor Tim Walz's watch. Now, in states like Missouri, where I live, a state that was the first to end abortion after Roe's reversal, had to fight an extreme abortion ballot referendum. And while these fights took a lot from all the organizations involved in these 10 states across the country, it was amazing to see the collaboration and innovation at the grassroots level, despite the millions of dollars that came in from out of state. And 2 of the students I really wanted to highlight that took a part in this abortion extremism battle was Mike from Missouri and Mia from Florida. Both of these students aren't just leaders on their campus, they are a strong representation of our fellows who made it their mission to fight abortion extremism in their state. Mia and Mike both went door to door, not just with us, but on their own time. They hosted multiple displays on their campus. Mike even would head out with our RC to other campuses to make sure they heard all about the truth on the abortion referendum. They participated in our billboard truck tour, and all while being full-time students. And they promised me they went to class, so let's hope they did. Now, while we lost some states last night, we did have victories in Florida, South Dakota, and Nebraska. And this matters because this is the abortion industry's new plan to enshrine abortion through all 9 months. Force deceptively written and confusing ballot referendums onto state ballots where people will vote to allow abortion through all 9 months, even when they oppose such a position. Our students and staff made sure to do everything they could to educate voters leading up to the election, and we did this through door-to-door canvassing and our abortion on the ballot tour. And it was through these conversations we were able to address any misconceptions and help voters see how extreme these measures would really go. So for example, one of our staffers was at our Missouri deployment, and he was talking with a woman at the door named Precious, who had never heard of Amendment 3. But she said she didn't want to take away choices from women and she'd probably vote in favor of it. So she asked our staffer why he was out door knocking against the amendment. And he told her that he didn't believe that he or anyone else for that matter had the right to say that another human being was less deserving of human rights, and how this amendment would deprive all preborn children in Missouri the fundamental right to life. She said she understood that, and after talking a while longer, she agreed that there needed to be at least some limitations on abortion and that she would be voting no on the amendment. And on our abortion on the ballot tour at the University of Arizona, there was a group of 10 girls that were walking by, and one of them stopped to ask what the display was all about. So our team explained that they were talking to people about how extreme the ballot referendum was, and were encouraging people to vote no, even if they were pro-choice. And the couple of the girls had a lot of pushback, but our team talked to them saying abortion wouldn't be illegal if they voted no, but rather regulate abortion after 15 weeks and 6 days, which is more than most people are comfortable with. And after a 30-minute conversation, the girls all said they were still pro-choice, but were not in favor of how extreme the ballot referendum was, that they didn't like all the safeguards it would remove for children, as well as the taxpayer funding, and they were scared about non-doctors being able to recommend abortion. And they walked away saying that they would vote no, and they appreciated our dialogue. And I got one more story for you. In a swing state of North Carolina, someone walked up to one of our staffers on campus and said that Students for Life content helped them be more pro-life and vote for pro-life candidate. So we know how our outreach and resources can do amazing things by simply telling people the truth. So as you can see, this election cycle, our student leaders dedicated their time and energy to influence election and save lives. We engaged in important elections to ensure that pro-life champions won, and our team is poised to continue our political efforts with a generation of politically engaged student leaders who have this election cycle as a foundational experience. And you can be a part of this difference that the Pro-Life Gen is making on campus and in our communities by joining or starting a pro-life group on your campus. And you can go to prolifegen.org for more information. That's PROLIFEGEN.org, prolifegen.org. And I'll pass things over now to Chanel Jacobs, the VP of our sister organization, Students for Life Action, who will explain the SFLA action difference in pro-life politics.
Thanks, Reagan. Those are some great stories from out in the field. And we had a lot of great wins last night, as Kristan reviewed. And I won't repeat all of them for you. But I think the key difference here at Students for Life Action is that we are doing the work of the pro-life movement that no other organization is doing. Specifically engaging in primaries to help elect the most pro-life candidates who can then carry the banner forward. And we then re-elect them, elect them in the general election as well. We get engaged earlier this year and more aggressively than ever before. And it paid off. As Kristan said earlier, we engaged in 156 primaries and won 86 of them at an average cost per win of just a little over $1,000. And this is a huge testament to the dedication of our field staff and our student army, many of whom are new to politics and are just getting involved for the first time. We're teaching them to hunt where the ducks are and to work hard and to engage in races where the mobilization of pro-life voters can really make a difference in the election. This November, we defended those primary wins that we racked up this spring in general elections. Again, as Kristan mentioned, even in places like swing states like Pennsylvania and in North Carolina, in Michigan. Winning a lot of those races not just creates a more conservative caucus, but then helps keep the GOP in control of state houses and congresses. Why primaries? Well, we found that our legislative work in state capitals has taught us that our efforts to pass pro-life laws in state legislatures are often battles between true pro-lifers who would want to advance strong legislation and then weak Republican establishment leaders who prefer to take the path of least resistance. And leadership will cater to the least pro-life or most pro-abortion member of the caucus to hold everyone together. And we face 50 state capitals that have 50 little swamps filled with folks who got elected in a pre-Dobbs world where they could say they were pro-life, but because of Roe versus Wade, they didn't have to do anything. But let's face it, under Roe, many of those Republicans with no convictions said they were pro-life to get elected. And now, unfortunately, they're betraying pro-life voters and dragging the Republican Party to the left. But we have the solution to that problem. The pro-life generation is dedicated to protecting innocent life and law and not catering to the Republican establishment. And our strategy is quite simple. We tell the politicians what we want, specifically strong legislation to end chemical abortion or life at conception acts, or to stop pill trafficking. We get them on the record through a recorded vote, and we follow through with consequences if they don't protect life. We inform their constituents what they've done or failed to do during the elections, and we educate voters on how the representatives have failed to protect preborn babies. And we did this a ton this spring and fall in primaries and in general elections. As a result of that hard work, the groups of Republican state legislators that are taking office just January in over a dozen states are far more pro-life and more willing to fight for preborn babies than they were just 10 months ago. And there is no other group doing this. One of the programs we'll be launching tonight, we'll be talking more and more about over the next few months, is our new C4 alumni program. We'll work with dozens of recently graduated students to prepare them to run for office or assist others in running and take on those Republicans who betray the pro-life movement. So our focus on the primaries had a huge impact, and I want to tell you very briefly about what we did in South Carolina, and there are stories like this in countless other states. But the pro-life generation has been involved in a long battle to finally end abortion in the Palmetto state. And last year, 6 Republican state senators sided with Democrats to filibuster and kill the state's Human Life Protection Act. And after the vote, our team immediately sprung into action, engaging in all 6 districts doors and flyering churches to expose what they'd done. And then during the spring primary elections, we continued our door-to-door, engaged voters with the mail and calls and texts and digital ads. And we threw the kitchen sink at them, and it paid off. And our goal was not just to win, but to send a message to the South Carolina Republicans and Republicans across the nation that there are electoral consequences to standing with Democrats and killing pro-life bills. And so our hard work was rewarded when the 3 sister senators, who you'll hear a lot about and who you've probably heard quite a bit about so far, who led the filibuster, and became poster children for the effort, they were defeated in their primaries. And in this specific race of Sandy Sen, our work was the difference maker in that she only lost by 31 votes after we knocked on over 1,000 doors in her district. Then last night, Representative Matt Lieber, who had defeated her in the primary, was elected in the general after our education efforts there as well. And the result is that he will be a state senator in South Carolina. And there are stories like this in other states like Oklahoma, West Virginia, Wyoming, that you'll come to hear over the course of the next couple months as we continue to promote the work that we've done. But why are stories like this so important? As I said, in over a dozen states, the Republican caucuses in the state legislature will be more pro-life, more conservative than they were at the beginning of 2024. And this means that there'll be fewer obstacles, fewer pro-choice Republicans, fewer cowardly naysayers, holding the pro-life movement back from passing strong pro-life laws into law next session. And what does this mean? Well, abortion is a state, a federal, and local issue, and pro-abortion Republicans may end up causing gridlock in Congress. And so, the state level is one that we really have to play at. And with more state legislatures becoming more pro-life, states with 6-week or 12-week gestational limits like South Carolina or Florida or Nebraska can take significant steps to end abortion entirely. And states that have already ended abortion, places like Oklahoma and West Virginia, can stop the trafficking of dangerous chemical abortion pills. Well, what does this do? We are, through our work, we are creating states that speak the truth about abortion, that end abortion, and that have children that grow up in them, and women that thrive in them. States that don't have, where abortion is illegal and unthinkable. And those states will be, a shining beacon to the rest of the nation, to places that might have made a mistake in their ballot questions, that might have, voted wrong. They can see what goes on in Florida, and they can see that the lie that women need abortion is in fact untrue. And they can see these places are living proof where millions of people live and thrive without abortion. And that will help us then later on reverse what happened last night in places like Arizona and Missouri, and truly make the whole nation abortion free. And so with that, I'm going to turn things over to Kristi Hamrick, who is our Media and Policy VP, to talk about what legislation we will have to promote in state legislatures and in Congress, and what we will need to be asking President Trump for, as well as Congress and the U.S. Senate. Kristi?
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you to all who've joined us tonight. If you're asking how fast did it take us to start getting to work on what we want, it took us as long as it took Letitia James, the New York Attorney General, to run to a microphone saying, don't cut her money. And frankly, as long as it took Jack Smith, the other prosecutor against Trump, to say that he was dropping his cases. I'm talking to you right now from Washington, D.C., after being up all Tuesday night, all Wednesday night, got on a plane this afternoon to start meetings tomorrow to talk about what we want. And if you think we don't know what we want, then you haven't read the 50,000-page memo, which I've already written on the subject, to which Kristan will send you, probably an abbreviated version. But what do we want? Let's start with who we want, because personnel is policy. We know that weaponized officials at the Attorney General's office, at HHS, at the DOJ, at the FTC, frankly, NASA even. I mean, frankly, they're not going to be happy till they have chemical abortion pills on the moon in case they discover life there. So we are talking about some very key appointments, and we're talking to the Trump administration about this from the beginning. We all know, we've heard about Robert F. Kennedy being possibly at the FDA. We see that more as an advisory role, but he's going to have a role in picking some of the players. The Department of Justice pick will be first. Kevin McCarthy, for example, is being discussed as a possible chief of staff. So what we want to talk to the Trump administration first is about getting the people in place to handle the kind of policy that is not his favorite. And that's okay. President Trump, we can work with him. He wants to cut the federal involvement with abortion. Great, let's do that. Let's start by cutting the money and let Planned Parenthood go fund themselves. But so first off, the people in place to do the policy that Trump doesn't prefer. He wants to do crime in the border. He wants to do the economy and inflation. He's good at that. We all could use that. We'd like to see other people in key roles at HHS, at the FDA, at the EPA, at the Federal Trade Commission, taking a look. And frankly, I think at the Department of Education, when you look at how Title IX has been really destroyed by the policy directions of the Biden-Harris and frankly, the Harris-Walz administration, if that had been allowed to play out. So people first, cutting the money second. That has to include looking at the kinds of traditional things we want to see day one, Mexico City, return of Hyde to spending bills, the Weldon Amendment, the Dornan Amendment. I mean, abortion funding is infiltrated throughout our federal budget like a cancer, sucking away life-affirming kinds of bills and kinds of money. I don't know that most people understand that our budget isn't a budget. Most of us sit down, we have a single account, maybe two. You're writing bills out of that. There are 12 separate funding bills. And one of the ways that the abortion lobby and that abortion-loving policymakers have really hurt the pro-life movement is by sticking different bits of abortion in different kinds of bills, in 12 different bills. And then we have to go and try to fight the money all in all these different bills. And it sucks energy out of our movement. It takes our time. And we're running around to stop it in military funding, in food stamp funding, in educational funding, in healthcare funding. And frankly, at this point, in terms of international funding, we're a huge funder of international abortion. I don't know if you heard about what happened with PEPFAR. That is one of the most beloved programs in the country. It deals with international aid support to help people who are dying. And what the Biden-Harris administration did was give money to abortion vendors to attack pro-life laws in other countries under reproductive whatever through AIDS funding. It's been a nightmare for us to fight this. We need the no taxpayer funding of abortion law, not a regulation law. We need the money cut to Planned Parenthood. We need the right people in place to monitor these changes. The next thing that we want to do, of course, is we want our government to be supporting women and children. Fourth trimester support is what we call it. When you think about a baby and those early days with the baby, I've had 4 myself. You're tired. The last thing you want to do is figure out the paperwork of it all. We want to make sure that there's support for people raising up the next generation. And it's fascinating to me how Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi and the abortion lobby argues that we need open borders because we have a lower replacement rate, while at the same time they're funding a lower replacement rate through abortion. That's insane. You already know the government's insane. We saw the election. People voted that it was insane, and we want to change that. But we need that 4th trimester support, child tax credits, things like that to help those young families who are making that investment. 4th, we want to take a look at the legal side of things, the weaponization of policy across the board. We really had tremendous concerns that free speech, for example, would disappear if Harrison won. I don't think that's hard to imagine. She's actually a Canadian. You guys know that. Raised in Canada. So when you look at the kinds of things that happened in Canada with stopping people from praying, what she did in California, what California is doing now, trying to make Catholic hospitals pay for abortion, trying to shut down pro-life speech, that kind of weaponization of the legal system against pro-life Americans is huge. And 5th, we want to see, frankly, that we free the pro-life warriors. I can't be the only person who looked at campuses being shut down. I'm still paying for kids in college. Where Jewish students couldn't walk freely, where kids couldn't get into a building, and education is shut down, no access to education. And that's nothing. People walked away from it. But you pray for an hour or two outside an abortion vendor and you're in a federal prison. There's something wrong with that. We're calling for a pardon for those people who have faced federal FACE Act crimes and frankly, for the FACE Act to be dissolved and disbanded. We're going to be looking for a lot of help in the days to come because there's a very vibrant agenda. If all we do is reverse what Biden-Harris did, that's a lot of work to do. That's a lot of people to appoint. There are 4,000 appointments that need to be in process starting today. I'm here in Washington right now to try to give voice to the things that we want. But what we want is that we protect life and law and in service. And we have an agenda in place, both for the federal and the state government, looking at a legal framework that was at work. One of the things we've heard a lot is that, look, you guys can't do anything. It's all over. There's many rows because of these ballot initiatives, and we don't have 60 votes in the Senate. Whatever, that's just ridiculous. 60 votes didn't stop the Biden-Harris administration from wreaking havoc. What I'm telling you is that there is a way, using the Carhart v. Gonzalez legal construct, which allowed us to limit a method and means of abortion, in that case, partial birth abortion. We are looking at chemical abortion, the number one method and means of abortion, with a legislative construct, a legal construct, frankly, because we will end up in court, for attacking this way in which we are killing most people in the womb. I think it's very exciting. On November 12th, we're going to have a discussion of that. I actually spent all day talking to policymakers about it. The ink wasn't even dry on the almost certification of Trump's win. And Kristan had me in other meetings. And like I said, I hope to represent y'all tomorrow well, assuming I get enough coffee before that happens. Let me turn it back to Kristan. We're going to win in Jesus' name, but we're going to win because we're not afraid to fight and we're not afraid to ask for some things. And I have a very long laundry list, and I can't wait to get started.
You all, I think, have just seen the tenacious Kristi Hamrick, knowing that she is representing you in Washington, D.C. very well, much to the chagrin of probably some of those policymakers as she's walking into their office. She is not letting them budge an inch. And we're going to be tough, and we're going to demand that the pro-life movement is treated seriously and that we move swiftly with this new Congress, with President Trump, to save preborn human lives, because that is our mandate. We are not there in Washington, D.C. to make friends. Someone was asking me today, are you going to the inauguration? And I said, I don't have any desire to stand outside in the cold. I've done that before at the March for Life, and I'll be there a few days later at the March for Life, and then go to the gala. I'd rather be in the offices on Capitol Hill getting the work done. So it's not really about party and celebration. Now the real work has begun. And what we saw today in Kamala Harris's concession speech is they are going to fight the hardest they can in the next 2 months, to make it almost impossible for us to reverse all that they've done in the next 4 years. And so we're going to be vigilant, and there's going to be a lot of talking points and action items coming from our team in the next few weeks and months. So please stay tuned. I want to reiterate the website that Reagan introduced earlier, prolifegen.org. This is where you can consider joining, no matter your age, no matter your experience level in the pro-life movement. I guarantee you, if you go to prolifegen.org right now, prolifegen.org, you will find a way to join us in the pro-life movement, whether that's becoming a future pro-life champion and saying you want to run for office and be trained or help run a political campaign, or maybe you want to go and help lobby at the state capitals, like in South Carolina. Chanel was saying how we want to introduce and see abortion ended with the Life and Conception Act this year because of our work in the primaries and in the general race, whether that's starting or joining a pro-life student group to help us get beyond 1,500 groups and achieve our goal of having a pro-life student organization on every four-year campus, whether it's just purchasing some merchandise and taking that baby step of wearing that pro-life t-shirt, putting that sticker on your car to have conversations in the church parking lot. There is a place for you, or even to going door to door to educate your neighbors about pregnancy resource centers in your neighborhood and all the good work that they do, nonviolent healthcare, through our campaign for abortion-free states. So I'll stop, but there's a lot you can do. And I want to encourage you also to register for the November 12th webcast, Tuesday, November 12th webcast that Kristi was talking about. We're going to really unveil more of these plans with state legislators, some federal leaders. You can just go to the 2025 proliferoadmap.com, 2025 proliferoadmap.com. Now, to close us out, I want to address some questions that Students for Life leaders submitted today, and I'm going to call on some folks to help us here. So one of the questions we got, I'm going to ask this for Reagan, since you're there in Missouri. One student asked, one thing I'm wondering is, what is our plan moving forward in traditionally conservative states like Missouri, where the pro-abortion ballot initiative passed?
Well, that's a great question. And the first thing that I asked, and was even asking in advance in the case that, God forbid, this did pass. But the first thing is, at Students for Life, we're going to keep doing what we always do, and that's changing hearts and minds. Because by educating people, like I mentioned earlier, on the reality of abortion and the truth behind all of this, People are coming to their own conclusions. Missouri was a very, very close defeat with 52 to 48%. So we know that we are changing hearts and minds. So I would say that continue going out on your campus or in your community, educating your friends and family and your peers on the reality of abortion is so important. Secondly, I will say the governor-elect, Mike Kehoe, in his speech last night did mention that undoing this tragedy would be one of his first priorities in office. So we need to hold our legislators to those promises and make sure that we're doing everything we can at the state level to combat this. So that's what I would say is what's next for Missouri, as well as the other states that unfortunately lost last evening.
And once again, go to 2025 proliferoadmap.com and sign up. And that's where Kristi's going to get really nerdy with you with that 50-page memo of all the things we can do in states, even states that have passed abortion referenda, that we can actually limit the evil of abortion. So there's a lot we can do. We've gotten creative in the pro-life generation. We've been preparing for this moment. Another question someone asked was, I guess one thing I'm wondering is, now that some of the ballot initiatives have been defeated, do we have to worry about them being proposed the next year, the year after? I would answer that yes. Kristi, Chanel, do you have insights into this? I feel like the abortion lobby, I mean, they raised $500 million for these 10 ballot initiatives. It's a moneymaker for somebody, maybe the people printing the paper and doing the deceptive TV ads. So just where there's money, I often see these would say that there was more engagement.
Again,
That's
maybe
my
it won't
favorite. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Chanel.
maybe it won't be, next year or next cycle or even 2 years, but they will be back. I can't imagine they won't. As you said, there's abortion is a big business, and the more states that they can expand it, they will. Some states have specific provisions that if a ballot question is defeated, they cannot come back 2 years from now. But I don't know offhand if any of the ones that we were successful in last night have those provisions. It's something worth considering changing in your state if you to reform that process to make sure these things stay dead and can't come back year after year. But if they can't bring them back right away, they will try again at some point. And we as a pro-life movement need to be continuing to, as Reagan said, educate voters, educate our neighbors, tell them the truth about abortion, but also organize and mobilize. Get more people, not just, out of the stands and onto the field, as the old saying goes, and involved in the process, lobbying or running for office. Again, if you go to prolifegen.org, you can get more involved in our lobbying efforts or run for office yourself.
Yeah, I would agree with Chanel. In those states where they only need a 50+1, I would change it to 60, so that you can prevent that from coming back. I mean, that's what helped us win in Florida, frankly. But my favorite thing about the ballot initiatives where we won was that they chose these abortion ballot initiatives. I mean, look at Colorado and New York and Maryland. They picked them in places where there was already radical abortion support to get out the vote for Harris, Walz, and Biden Harris, and they lost anyway. I mean, honestly, God, I'm just laughing. I'm laughing all night long. I was going to say something more direct, but I think that's hilarious. So it didn't work out the way they thought. They were very expensive. They take a lot of time. I think Chanel's right. They'll come back. In those states that it didn't pass, you can protect yourself with the 60 vote margin like Florida has. But it is funny that they got hoisted on their own petard. So good luck with that. You passed it and it didn't work out for you, and Trump is president, and now you have abortion in places you already had abortion. And we're going to come back with legislation, because if you think you're protected, you are not. What you are is burdened with something that you can't do again in those places where they've already done it. You can't alter your constitution for abortion every 4 years. It's not going to work out. The law won't let you. And I find it hilarious that it didn't work out for them.
Tell us how you really feel, Kristi. I'm not sure.
Exactly. I'm not trying to gloat, because I think gloating's a sin. I will definitely repent about that tomorrow.
Well, the last question that I want to ask that came in from our students was from a kind of a Debbie Downer question. The person said, I want to know whether we really won or not. How is this not just a win for Republicans, but how is this an actual win for the pro-life movement? I would like to answer that. I think it can be easily answered. 50,000 babies will be saved because Florida's Amendment 4 failed. If nothing else happened last night, it was a win for the pro-life movement. 50,000 babies a year will be spared the violence of abortion. Have we been discouraged by some things President Trump has said recently? Yes. Have I disagree with some of the things President Trump has said recently? Yes. And he's well aware of those things. Is there a path to work with President Trump and his new administration and the now Republican Senate and hopefully the Republican House? Heck, yes, there's a path. There is a path forward to limit the evil of abortion. And whenever there's a path forward, that has been a victory. And especially when you consider what we were facing with a Kamala Harris presidency, where we weren't only going to be facing the largest expansion of abortion ever, mandating abortion up until the moment of birth in every state across the country. We were going to be fighting for our mere survival as a pro-life movement, to have our pro-life organizations, on campuses, to have the rights to free speech, to have the rights to free assembly. You all might have missed it, but just a week ago, a law in the UK finally took effect that we have been fighting in the pro-life movement that makes it a crime to convince someone not to have an abortion. It's a literal crime to speak your mind in the UK. And they've already been imprisoning people for social media posts. That is exactly what the abortion lobby wants to do in the pro-life movement in America. Why would they want to do that? Because they realize they will never win as long as we are here in the pro-life movement. Sometimes folks ask me why or how did we see Roe reversed? What was the magic sauce, the secret that we had to seeing Roe versus Wade reversed? And I like to say there was some special tactic or thing we had. It was this: we were gritty and we persevered. We endured. General Nathaniel Greene had a famous quote after the American Revolution of how the colonial rebels won. And the quote was, "We rise, we fight, we get beat, we rise again." That's exactly what the pro-life movement did for every single day for 49 years. We rose, we fought, we got beat, and we rose again. That was the secret sauce of the pro-life movement. And that is why the abortion lobby will do anything they can to silence us. Because as long as we have our movement, as long as we are growing our movement by investing in Students for Life groups on campuses, training pro-life youth leaders, growing into a more sophisticated, larger army, they know they will never be victorious. And silencing the pro-life movement and seeing abortion on demand take hold in our nation in up to the moment of birth for whatever reason and taxpayer funded, that will never happen as long as we keep fighting, as long as we keep persevering. So I want to end tonight by thanking you for joining us, thanking you for getting out the vote, for all that you did this year, whether you were door knocking with us, holding signs, sending in a few dollars. We appreciate it all. And we were so honored to stand beside you and fight with you. Please go to prolifegen.org right away. Find your place in the pro-life movement and join us. We need you right now. I 100% believe we will be victorious in our lifetime of ending the scourge of abortion, but it's not going to be easy. As I said earlier, the devil was wounded after Roe fell, but he wasn't killed. And that means he's angry. That means there'll be hell to pay. And that means our fight is harder than ever before. So we need you with us. Good night.